Are you an adventurer looking to take your hunt to the next level? Then you're in the right place. Welcome to East Meets West Hunt with your host, Bo Martonic.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the East Meets West Hunt podcast presented by onX. So I'm using onX Maps actually today, sitting here in front of me on my computer to do some final scouting for my Idaho trip, which is coming up this week. This will be the last episode that I release before I leave. I'll have another one coming out next week, but everything will be pre-recorded for that. And so what I'm doing with onX is one thing that Corey Jacobson taught me with the University of Elk Hunting online course was to go through and use onX to mark water sources, bedding areas, and food sources. So I'm going through and marking all these areas that have potential to have all these three things close to each other and marking as many as possible, more than I could ever go in my 13 days I'm going to be elk hunting. And I do that so that when I get out there, I always have backup plans. So I'm doing that right from my computer at home, 2,000 miles away from where I'll be hunting, and that automatically transfers right to my phone, right to the Hunt app, and I can utilize that while I'm in the field and check out these spots. Being prepared like that just helps out so much when things don't go as planned, and it takes the stress off you to have backups. So if you want to check out the onX Hunt app, you can use the code EMW and save yourself 20% at onxmaps.com. Maven Optics. And so Maven, I've been using Maven now for quite a few years, and their optics are the highest quality optics available at half the price of their competitors because of their direct-to-consumer business model. So they're selling directly from them to you, and being able to work directly with the customers. And so their optics, I'm taking along the Maven B2 9x45s and the Maven S2 spotting scope with me on this trip. I'll utilize the B2s, the binoculars, to glass and try to find game, and then utilize the spotter to really figure out what's going on. And say the middle of the day when there's shadows coming down, some stuff that Clint Casper actually on a recent podcast brought up as far as some glassing tips. So I'm using these two options that weigh a total of about, I think it's like 64 ounces between the two of them, which isn't really that much for carrying high quality glass around and being able to find game. Yes, it's a lot of weight when you look at it compared to other things, but optics, if you can't see the animal, then you're not really hunting anything, especially in some open country areas. So Maven Optics has offered a code EastMeetsWest-gift that'll get you a free gift with any full price optics order from mavenbuilt.com. The University of Elk Hunting and Corey Jacobson have, he's come out with this fully comprehensive elk hunting learning course. And I talked about a little bit there when I was, discussing onX, but the scouting option, that has just been, that's probably one of the most valuable pieces I've pulled from that course, and being able to really have an efficient way to scout, because you can spend hours and hours and hours on onX to find, to scout areas. But if you don't have a plan for it and be efficient with it, all of us are busy. And his online course really dives into that in detail. So the University of Elk Hunting is available over at elk101.com, and you can use the code EastMeetsWest to save yourself 20% off the annual membership. So, all right, on today's podcast, I have Johnny Mack from Washington Backcountry coming on, and Johnny's a really interesting guy. I've met him just through social media now over the last couple of years, and he's super passionate about as the title of this podcast says, is mentorship. And, as a hunter that came into hunting, or I guess an individual that came into hunting at a later age than a lot of us have. He had to learn from the beginning and learned how hard it was to get into hunting without any sort of mentors or anything else. And he just really wanted to be able to give back to others and be able to help out for that. So his mission behind Washington Backcountry and the Soulful Hunter podcast is great, and I fully stand behind it. So Johnny and I really dive into a lot of mentorship, opinions versus perspective, and, basically defining adventure, as, my tagline is, alludes to. And then also just ending it with a story of his first, taste of success on a Western big game animal on an elk last year. So it's a really interesting podcast here with Johnny, and I think you all like it. So I guess the last thing I want to say is next time that you hear from me, I'll be in the backcountry of Idaho hunting elk, leaving here on Friday the 13th, leaving there after work and heading out with Mason and Michael and meeting up with Justin Mueller, who will be filming and photographing the whole hunt and hopefully put together a pretty cool story on it. I'm feeling really confident about it this year. This will be my 4th year hunting elk, and I think that it's going to come together. I'm with a great group of guys and everything else. So I think I really, truly have an optimistic view of how this hunt's going to go. But I know it's going to be tough, and I know it's going to be what elk hunting always is, and a lot more of tough times than good. But I'm looking forward to it. So let's dive right into the podcast here with Johnny Mack. All right, we're live. Johnny Mack, Washington Backcountry. What's up, man?
Dude, Bo, what's happening? Thanks for having me on today.
Yeah, no problem. I was been looking forward to this call. You and I went back and forth, messaging each other and a couple phone calls here for the last probably 6 or 8 months. So I'm glad that we got some time that we can get together here.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You have always been someone I've looked up to since my journey diving into social media and hunting. And your tagline, "How do you define adventure?" has always been something that has spoke to my soul and been something that I have also had a vision and a purpose with towards hunting as well. So I'm glad that we finally get a chance to connect and talk.
Yeah. So I'm not going to steal your thunder here, but John, you were one of those guys that, are up and coming as far as, creating something that's outside of a comfort zone. It's a little bit of risk, a whole bunch of stuff, similar to what, I did with the podcast and everything. And there's a lot of people doing that stuff out there now, and a lot of great, things coming out of it. But it's just something about what you have going on stuck out to me, and I really wanted to get you on here and get to talk a little bit more about it. So if you want to, start off by kind of giving a little bit of a background in yourself, which you have a really interesting background in how you kind of came into hunting.
Oh yeah, man. I my pleasure. So my name is Johnny Mack. I am a middle school physical education and health teacher in the state of Washington. And I'm the founder of the social media and website Washington Backcountry. And I'm also the host, as of last week, of the Soulful Hunter podcast. And my mission of what I'm trying to do is, so I'm an adult onset hunter. I am 35 years now, but at 29, I decided to take my hunter safety course and really dive into becoming a hunter. And it was something that I always knew inside of me I wanted to do. I had a call for adventure upon my life when I was just a tiny little boy, but I constantly ignored it, and I wasn't raised in a household that hunted. And I was a high school football coach for several years, and finally that battle between what I really and ultimately wanted to pursue and what I thought was something I wanted to pursue came to a head, and I walked away from coaching and I took up arms literally, and I set to the woods, and it was time for me to find myself and find purpose and passion in what I did. And what I found along this journey is trying to become a hunter as an adult is not easy, especially when you have zero resources other than the internet and YouTube. There's nobody that is really, well, at least at that point. Things have really changed over the last couple of years, but at that point in time, the hunting community was extremely closed off. They were not very welcoming to new hunters, at least over in the state of Washington where I was at. It was like, hey, you hunt? Okay, sweet. Can you take me? Will you show me? Will you teach me? And it was no after no after no, and a lot of, yeah, sure, give me a call when the season comes, and then, no phone calls back, or hey, can I join you at deer camp? And then all of a sudden, yeah, well, I got to check with my uncle, my dad, or we've been doing this as a family for a long time, and I don't know if there's room for one more. I got to check with them, type thing. And so what I learned is that in the hunting community, there's zero mentorship and zero opportunity for people to really get involved if it's not something that's been passed down generation to generation. And so what I wanted to do, being a teacher, is I wanted to educate people and provide an opportunity for people to get involved and build community and be a part of something greater than themselves and be a part of something that's going to change their lives. And that's where I came up with the tagline with Washington Backcountry and the Soulful Hunter podcast, is that it's going to transform your life through primal adventure. And so been set on this journey, and I took to the internet, started a website, wrote a book, started a podcast, and having an absolute blast with it.
Yeah. I mean, you and I were talking a little bit here before the podcast about like just the time it takes to put into something. And I said I recognized, what you're doing and how much commitment, that takes to put out content at the level you are and help people like at the level that you are. And that's truly something that, like, if you're not extremely passionate about it, and if you're in it for the wrong reasons, you wouldn't have done all this stuff that you've been able to do. And I completely commend you on it. And I didn't know until recently that you wrote a book. So that's pretty awesome in itself.
So yeah, the book is not published yet, but it is written, and now I'm revising it. And I actually was able to get it in the hands of Stephen Ranella. I met him in Seattle and told him I quoted him in my book and asked him if he would be willing to read it and give me a review. And so he did, and he sent that back. And I doubt he would even know who I am. But the point is, the book is all about my journey of becoming a hunter as an adult and the challenges. So it's called Found. The story of a soulful hunter, and it's about finding yourself in the wilderness and finding purpose and passion and through adventure.
That's awesome. And the fact that, so did you like go to a place to specifically meet Steve, or did it just happen? You said you ran into him.
It was, so this is all last spring. So March or April 2018. When I really decided I wanted to hit hard and start an Instagram account and start writing a book. And it started with the book. And I'm a BHA member here in the state of Washington, and they were having a pint night in Seattle. And I was like, dude, I got to go. It's the first time I'm really trying to connect with people and talk with them. And he just happened to be there that night. And so a part of me being an advocate for hunting is I need to be an advocate also for myself. And so I started with the courage to walk up and talk to him.
Yeah.
So I only had just a few minutes with him, and he told me how to send me a transcript of my book or manuscript of my book to him. And that was that.
Man, that's awesome. So he read it and gave you some feedback on it, or a review at least?
Yeah. He said it's something that every new hunter should hear.
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
Well, good for you, man.
So,
that's exciting. So to talk a little bit, like, you started Washington Backcountry, just really a year and a half ago, not even, a little over a year ago, and you've come a long way in that short amount of time. to do that. So what is your kind of plan with it? What are you looking to do with Washington Backcountry? I know that you're talking about the recruitment and mentorship part of it, but kind of explain that a little bit deeper.
I want to take it nationwide, what I'm doing, and spark fires in people's souls all over the nation to, if you are a hunter, to open up your arms and welcome people and be ambassadors for the sport and for the community, and to spark a fire in people's souls to get off the couch, be active, and pursue adventure in their lives. Our souls, we were made to create. We were made to be active. We were made to do things. And when we work a 9-to-5 job that is not fulfilling in our souls, we die. And we die a slow, painful, sad, lonely death. And more often than not only that, but we are constantly distracted by the buzz of society. You know, I got a phone in front of me. I got an Apple Watch on my wrist that constantly reminds me of to get moving or to do different things. And we're never left alone to truly connect with ourselves, connect with nature, connect with our creator, and to find who we really are, what we really want, and what our purpose is in life.
Yeah. And when you said that you started hunting, what was that, 5 years ago, 6 years ago now, or you took your hunter safety course 6 years ago and you started hunting about 5 years ago, correct?
Yep, correct.
So what was that journey like? So when you said it was tough to find, the mentorship and everything else. So how did you kind of get into it and with the limited resources that you had?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for me, I always started out, I backpacked from the first time I ever went backpacking was a section of the Pacific Crest Trail when I was 7 years old in second grade. And I remember being in the wilderness and coming across deer and bear and different things and being out doing something that my own body took me from point A to point B. And it was upon my own will and courage that I was out there and found myself. And even though at a young age, I always was also drawn to this concept of a cowboy and the adventure that they live and what it takes to be a man and true grit and the challenge of it. And I felt that in today's society, other than possibly joining the military and going to fight for your country, there's no other true adventure and challenge to find yourself other than becoming a hunter. And so I, being young and immature, pursued, girls or other interests, sports for a long time. For me, I grew up in a house where sports was king. My father is a state Hall of Fame football coach here in the state of Washington. And I played college football for a long time, but it wasn't fulfilling. And what I also found is that hunting is a lifelong thing that provides not only for you, but for everyone else around you. But sports is something that is so short. It's a time and a season in life. And so when it came for me to get into hunting, I wanted to be fulfilled. I wanted to try something new. I wanted to grow as a person, an individual. And so I took to the internet, and connecting it with my hiking days is I was always a backpacker. I used to work at REI. I was familiar with camping and backpacking and being out in the woods for that aspect. And I then took that and applied it to hunting, and I've always been a proponent of the Second Amendment. And so it was doing the same thing, only bringing a gun with you. And so I took to the woods, had no idea how to find deer, how to find any animals. And for a long time, I was just hiking with a weapon. And so I used resources that I could, took to forums, and finally just trial and error to the point where I recruited a buddy of mine who's never hunted, and he became my hunting partner. And every Saturday we were taking hikes to look for deer tracks and find animals and do whatever we could. And eventually, it wasn't until this last year, 2018, that every time I went out into the woods, I found and saw the exact animal that I was looking for. Whether it was shootable, legal, or whatnot, it was, if I was looking for coyotes, I was able to find them. Deer, I was able to find them. Elk, all these things. And it finally, like, there's no other thing in life where you're able to make such gains and feel the reward in it, quite like hunting, that satisfies your soul and also provides the adventure.
Yeah, man, I can completely relate to that. I mean, even though that we came from different backgrounds as far as like I grew up hunting, and but it took me a while, probably not until about 4 or 5 years ago, probably 5 years ago, when I really realized how lucky, that I was to grow up in it and kind of what it meant to me. It was always one of those things that I just did and really enjoyed it, but never really, kind of dug deep inside myself to figure out, what the true meaning of it was and what that purpose was. Like, I've realized now that it's come to a point where it's not something that I do as a hobby. It's something that I need to do. And that's like, I mean, that sounds pretty, crazy to say, but it is. Like, it's
no longer a hobby. It's a lifestyle.
It is. It's 100% a lifestyle. I mean, not only did, I make a business out of it, but just even before that, I was still doing the same things. I just wasn't documenting it as good, and I don't know. I just want more. Like, I constantly want more of it. And when I did my first, Western hunt, it was literally life changing. I mean, I've hunted my whole life, but I've never hunted like that, where I was, I never was west of the Mississippi River, let alone go to the Rocky Mountains, and then just all of a sudden I show up there, throw a backpack on and hike for 7 days, with camp on my back and go through all the struggles of, the thunderstorms and the hailstorms and the snow that we're getting in September and all the struggles that you go through on these type of hunts. But it really truly connected me with everything. And when I came back, I felt like I was a better person for it, from the standpoint of, say at work, I don't know if it's like this in the schools, but where I work in a factory, it seems like just a lot of people complaining all the time about this and that, and it's always just constant complaining. And I now, like, those things seem so petty to me. Like, I try my best not to complain about things, and just, nothing's as big as you think they are, because once you get out there and really survive and thrive in the wilderness, or even, right behind your house, if you can hunt there, like, once you figure out that connection, and it's truly life changing.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And actually, one of the things that I wanted to ask you and get your perspective on is, all I've ever known is the Western style of hunting, right? You leave your car at a trailhead, you head off into the woods, and that's all I've ever known. And I know how that fulfills adventure for me in my life. And I wanted to talk to you about, what is it like being, like, that Eastern style hunter, where it's tree stands, it's blinds, maybe it's the back 40, or it's a 10-minute walk from your back deck. Like, how does hunting fulfill your soul and provide adventure in your life, even though you're truly not even getting all the way out into the wilderness?
So where I grew up is kind of a little bit of a mixture between Eastern hunting and Western hunting. There's a lot of places like you can get away from people and away from sounds and everything else. But at the same time, there is hunts like what you're talking about, where I'll go turkey hunting before work in the morning, and it's down the road from my house, or like, a short, walk in the woods. And it's all kind of how you put your mindset on it. And I've even hunted suburbs before, which was completely different for me and took me a little bit to kind of, figure it out. But it's just, you just have to let yourself kind of connect with it. It's different, don't get me wrong, but it's all the same, just depending on, that's why I kind of created the tagline, how do you define adventure? Because you can find that adventure through whatever it is. It just takes a little bit of a different mindset, and you kind of have some different goals with it, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So one of the things I need a little follow up from you is how do you specifically get the adventure out of it? Where is it that you're shifting your mindset, or do you feel like you need to find it somewhere else in life, or do you get complete fulfillment and immersion when you're out in the woods?
So for me, how I feel like I get that complete like immersion is when I step out of the truck and start walking in the woods, my mind is 100% turned on to the game that I'm pursuing. And I'm trying to think of, okay, it's say I'm hunting deer, and all right, the thermals are coming down the mountain this time. I wonder where the deer are going from their food at night to bedding. What are they doing with this weather conditions? All these things. When I start like completely diving down these rabbit holes of trying to think like the animal that I'm hunting and try to put myself in that place, I forget about the other stuff. And that's kind of how I personally feel like I kind of get away from the hustle and bustle with it. And that's kind of how I've done it, which is similar to the mindset out west, besides the fact that you're, adding in, say if you're doing a backpack trip, you're adding in kind of survival, trying to find your water, making sure you eat at the right times, sheltering from storms, all those things. But it's a little bit different. You don't have, I guess, as big of awe-inspiring, landscapes that you're seeing and everything, but you still kind of get the same experience from it. It's just, twisted up a little bit. But for me, it's all about once I start pursuing something and I turn it off. One of my buddies puts it really good. He calls it work mode and hunt mode. Like when he's at work, he's working. That's what he's there to work. When he goes into hunt mode, like his brain just flips a switch, and that's what he's focused on. He can't do, both of them at the same time. He's got to be, all in. And while I have to mix a little bit of that, for the most part, I'm able to kind of just turn it off and turn it on to the hunting mode. But it can be tough though, like I said, say I am doing a quick hunt before work and I'm always checking the watch or something like that. That can kind of deter from it a little bit. I just try to get the best out of it that I possibly can for the time that I have,
Yeah, totally. There's very few things in life that I've experienced other than high levels of competition in sports or specifically rock climbing that I have been able to clear my mind and focus on the task at hand, like hunting. Rock climbing provides that danger aspect that if you're not focused on it, something bad can happen. High level sports requires that focus to have complete awareness of what's going on around you. And that's also, you find that in hunting. So that's pretty cool. I like that. It's well put.
Yeah, well, that's interesting because I hadn't, thought about that in a while. So I'm glad you asked that question. And once you asked it, it came out, easy to me it's just something I haven't really thought of. It's just something I do, and sometimes it's nice to have that kind of refresher put in your mind of how you're doing it, I guess, to be able to explain to others. Because that's something that, even though I have a podcast and do writing and stuff, sometimes it's tough to put into words when it's something that I've done forever, It's something that I've always done. And I think what really changed me to be able to understand everything with it and the importance of it is when I moved to the Pittsburgh area. So I moved from living out in the middle of nowhere to near a major city. And then that's when I really appreciated everything I had. And I appreciated those moments more because I couldn't just go out every day after school or work to go out in the woods. I had to plan for it. And that, then I ended up moving, back to my hometown. And I just appreciated it so much more when I came back than I did when I left, if that makes, any sense with it. But
No, absolutely. It absolutely makes sense. And I think what's funny is how you're talking about not knowing things as well, but it just kind of naturally comes. I think that's one of the issues when it comes to people who have hunted for a long time. mentoring people. Well, it's like, well, why do you do that? Well, I don't know. It's just something that I do. It's just how I do it, rather than putting themselves in a position of going back to the very beginning and thinking, okay, I need to explain this step by step, because if I don't, there's no correlation and connection of understanding. And so that's a great concept of that, even though it comes naturally for you to reflect. I always talk about inward reflection leads to outward correction. Is when we take time to inwardly reflect, you are going to be able to take action on the outward and correct your life, or not even correct it if you're doing something wrong, but then realign it back to where you want to be going and refocus. And that is what a part of being a hunter and being still and quiet and being out in the moment does for you. It allows you to not only heighten your senses, but to reconnect and inwardly reflect.
That's a really good way of putting it, and I guess I'd never thought of it that way. And as you're talking about that, my mind's kind of spinning and thinking about. So the way that I've hunted white-tailed deer my whole life has always been in this big woods Appalachian region. Well, I grew up, I'd watch hunting TV and see them hunting these big farm country whitetails, and always thought that I was at like a disadvantage. Like, oh man, I wish I could have that or anything else. And then what I realized was, no, I'm really lucky for this style hunting I grew up doing. And when I started, writing and talking about it, I realized there was a lot more people that could relate to it, and so many that wanted that experience. Something that I was like as a young, kid, and even into my teens and early 20s, I was like, I didn't appreciate it as much as I do now. And now there's people, driving hours and hours to take a week-long trip to come hunt the Appalachian mountain region for whitetails, when that's never has been considered a destination. But by me reflecting on that and kind of, thinking about it, it changed it. Cause I started, when I started putting it out there just through social media was what I started with, and started getting all this feedback from people. And I'm like, that's awesome. I want to help others, experience this, even though I didn't take, that I kind of took it for granted at first. Like, I realized that there was an opportunity for me to be able to help people, do that, and be able to, if they really want to, commit to it and want that type of adventure, that they can have it. And I wanted to be that resource to be able to do that, And I think what you're saying there is just, I think it's spot on. And one of my really good friends, one of my best friends, Michael Palladino, I've had him on the podcast before, but he came into hunting later in life. He probably started like in the end of high school or so, but not like really, and didn't like, nobody in his family hunted, and he'd come up to our camp and everything. And my grandfather was teaching him how to shoot and helped him with a lot of that. And he had some other people that mentored him. And now, like, after we graduated college and everything, like, he is so into it. Like, and he's planning, hunts. We're doing an Alaskan hunt next year. We're planning to do-it-yourself hunt there together. And, like, he's so into it. And it's funny how, he's so, like, crazy passionate about it. But he didn't have those resources growing up to learn it, but he came into it later in life like you did, but it's just like, it just took over, everything about him. And he was big into sports and wrestling and everything else. And it kind of transitioned into this, love for hunting and love for the adventure of it. And I just think that's really cool.
Yeah. Thank you. People thirst for adventure in their life, and you're gonna get it from somewhere, and it's not always the most healthy thing. A lot of people will put themselves at risk to create adventure in their life, and that is something that we as humans need to reflect upon and take a look at ourselves and be like, well, that's not producing healthy fruit in our lives, and we need to produce healthy fruit and put ourselves in positions to not only take care of ourselves, which which hunting will do and provide, but then you get to leave a legacy with your family, your friends, your children, whoever it is. You're not only teaching something to yourself, growing as a human and an individual, you then get to provide meat, which is food, and being able to feed yourself and feed other people. You then get to teach people a life skill of how to provide food for themselves. And that's one of the craziest and coolest things that becoming a hunter and finding that adventure and that purpose does for people. And if you just take a moment to think about the impact of what it is, the ripple effect is huge. By you taking arms and becoming a hunter, you don't know how many lives you're going to impact for the good of humanity, the good of society, especially if you are doing a good job and being an ambassador for hunting.
Johnny, did you ever read the book Wild at Heart?
Absolutely.
Did you?
100%. I've read it a couple times. I'm about to have my third son this summer. This next month, I'm having my third boy.
Yeah.
Wild at heart. We were born wild at heart. We were not meant to sit behind a desk and sit in a chair for hours on end. We were meant to live, and life is now, and to capitalize on the life that you have. And one of the things that I want to talk about in regards to mentorship is that people live in fear. We're fearful of not knowing the right answer. We're fearful of not saying the correct thing. And at the end of the day, we all want to be heard. And the world needs to hear from Bo Martonix. The world needs to hear from Johnny Mack. The world needs to hear from our listeners. We need to hear what you have to say, and what you have to say is important. And that's why the mentorship aspect is so huge and is life-changing, because you can change the world just by taking a moment to open up and let your guard down and be vulnerable with other people.
Yeah, no, that's so true. That book, I think it's 2 years ago is when I read it, and I want to read it again here, or I have the audio book now, so I'll probably listen to it. But so I have some friends that I met through the podcast actually, but I had been watching their films for years on YouTube, or I think it was Vimeo at the time they had them out on. But these guys from a town close to me have a company called Wild at Heart Outdoors, and these guys were doing films that were just like next level, and so good about telling like the story of an adventure, and really inspired me with a lot of stuff. And they never pushed it like super hard, and they're starting to get back into it now. They have young families and everything, but their stuff was so good and moving. So once I reached out to them through, I think, social media, and I was like, hey, I want to have you guys on the podcast and talk. So I went and met up with them at their house and got to talk about them. And I said, where'd you get the name from? And they told me about that book, Wild at Heart, and like, you got to read it. And I did, and it was like everything just made sense. Like, society now is, just creating these people that, they're so into just comfort, and it's not even their fault, it's just the way that it's built now. And your soul just needs that adventure. Like, everyone's built for it. It just depends on what it takes to get it out of you. Maybe not everyone is, going to be a hunter, and that's not what I mean. But like, every man has that inside them to want to be that way, some way. There's something inside of you that does it. And for me, it's very easy for me to see it.
Absolutely. And for everyone listening to this podcast, if you have not read Wild at Heart, I totally recommend it. And it specifically talks about young boys growing up to be men. And there's a complement to that book where the author's wife wrote it. And I forget what the name of the book is, but it specifically talks about the woman's side of it as well.
And the author is John Eldredge, isn't it?
Yep, John Eldredge. That's right. Yeah. Fantastic book.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Highly, highly, highly recommend it. If you're heading, out west this year from the east or wherever you're listening from or whatever you're doing, get the audiobook and listen to it on your drive. It'll make that hunt so much, it'll
give you a perspective that you're not used to.
Yes.
And one of the things I've talked about on my podcast when I've interviewed some people recently is so often in life, people have opinions of things, but they don't have perspectives. You can have a natural bias inside you on, whether it's types of people or food or whatever, hunters versus non-hunters. But until you've actually tried it and have a perspective, you don't truly know, and you haven't truly lived. And for people to take the moment to try to get the perspective of what it's like, that is when the growth is made. And that's when you never know when you're going to spark a fire. And it only takes a spark to set the whole world ablaze.
No, you're 100% right. And, I'm glad that you are really highlighting that through what you're doing with Washington Backcountry and the Soulful Hunter podcast and everything else. Cause like I said, it's something that needs to be talked about more and show. And I think a lot of people are, but like just at a level that is showing and getting, other people involved that don't know that that's in them or haven't, received that perspective because they haven't been through it. So I truly respect that.
Thank you. So often in life, when people talk about what you need to survive and live is, you need food, water, shelter. And being a hunter, you're able to provide the food aspect. But what else we need as humans is we need community and we need to feel loved. And there's a lot of songs that have been written about finding love in all the wrong places. And this is why the hunting community opening up its arms and welcoming new people is so important, is that people want to be loved. People want to be accepted. People want to be a part of something greater than themselves. We need to provide them that opportunity. And you never know, not everyone is going to like wild meat. And so one of the things I've done with Washington Backcountry, I actually just had a conversation with a guy yesterday about this. And he was like, well, we've tried doing some wild game feeds and some people have enjoyed the wild game feeds, and then it sparked their interest a little bit into becoming a hunter. But you lose a lot of that aspect of people wanting to hunt once that taste has left their mouth, once they are not eating the food. And my shift in thought is that instead of it being really about around the food, even though we are hunters and that's a reward that we get, it is about the community. And so if you can provide a community, just like a Boys and Girls Club after school for children to go to, or being a part of a sports team is so important to get kids out of trouble and into something positive. Us as adults and us as humans need a community to focus our energy into and to hold us accountable. Where else are you going to truly exercise with a purpose? I know that when I'm busting my butt and getting up in the morning and running, I'm running because I want to be the best I can be in the woods this coming fall. And I want to stay in shape, and so being a part of that community is then all of a sudden, hey, you want to hunt? Yeah, I think that'd be cool. You want to try it together? Yeah, sure. And then all of a sudden this partnership develops and accountability starts and you go on this journey that is life-changing.
Yeah, no, that's so true. And once people experience that, so like when like you said about getting up in the morning and running, I do the same thing. I get up every morning, 4:30, sometimes earlier. Tomorrow morning, I'm doing this Mountain Tough Fitness program. And I have a 6-mile hike with a 50-pound pack, and I don't have time to do it after work because I'm traveling somewhere. So I'm going to have to get up at 3 in the morning to do that. And when you teach yourself discipline like that, it just goes over to so many other aspects of your life. And it makes you, in your case, I'm sure a better father, a better husband, a better teacher, everything, outside of hunting, and the same thing for me. It's made me so much, in as far as business goes, as far as family goes, friendships, everything. I truly think when you engulf yourself in a journey like this that is hunting, and you do it in a positive manner, and then take it a step further with introducing other people to it, it's something that it's difficult to put into words sometimes.
Absolutely. So whether you're doing it for yourself, doing it with yourself, or with other people as a part of like the fitness challenge you're talking about, not to make this about the Bible, but there's a Bible verse that talks about iron sharpens iron, so the countenance of one friend to another. The point of what I'm trying to make right there is that when you wake up to exercise and train with a purpose, you're sharpening yourself. You're only making yourself better. And just like friendships and holding people accountable makes each other better, that is when you provide purpose behind something, it changes the way you look at the world, and allows you to have way more motivation, and makes things a lot easier to get through your day. It gives people hope. It provides the inspiration needed to fight the good fight, and to run the race to win, and to just stay after it.
Yeah, no, Johnny, I couldn't have said it any better. And I think you should have started a podcast a while ago, because you're pretty good at explaining things and your thoughts on that. So I could see how you wrote a book.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem. It's something that, like I said, I have trouble sometimes putting into words that the things that I experienced. I try to reflect on it more now than ever to be able to, put that word out there now that I do have somewhat of a voice to be able to speak on, that people are listening to this podcast and everything else. I want to make sure that, it's brought out in the most positive light possible. And if someone's inspired, or even not even inspired, but like curious about doing something like that's outside of their comfort zone, to have them do it. Hopefully that this can motivate them to do it, or give them the resources to do that.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And one of the things is like in any type of career or any type of field where you're learning something new, you have mentors. When I got out of college and I student taught, I had a mentor teacher. When I was learning how to be an electrician and I was an electrical apprentice, I had, a journeyman electrician that taught me how to do it. Life is about that tradition and passing things on. And if we don't pass on hunting to the next generation, and even the current generation, we're going to lose it, because either you use it or you lose it. And that's why my big push is all about mentorship is conservation, because able to make sure that public lands exist and the legislation and money goes back into providing habitat for wildlife, that if you don't provide the opportunity for people to fall in love with hunting the way it has impacted my life, and I know the way it's impacted your life, if you don't provide that opportunity for others, then hunting's it's going to die. There's no one, there's an amazing quote. Oh, I'm drawing a blank on it, who said it, but it has to do with World War II, where it's like, first they came for the Bolsheviks, but I didn't say anything because I wasn't a Bolshevik. And then they came for the union workers, but I didn't say anything because I wasn't a union worker. And then they came for the Jews, and I didn't say anything because I wasn't a Jew. And then they came for me, and there was no one left to say anything because everyone else was gone. And that's how I look at it in regards to hunting, is if we don't take a stand and stand up for what we love and what we believe in, and encourage other people to join us, there's no one going to be able to take a stand for what we love once we're gone.
Yeah. Wow. That's a really good way of putting it. And being able to correlate that to, past historical events and, different career fields. Like you said, everything has a mentor. Like even like in college, you have advisors and everything else that, help you go along the way. And, why should hunting be any different? Like you said, if you want to continue that, and there's so many different ways of doing that, from physically taking people out and showing them to providing them with resources. There's just a whole bunch of different avenues to doing that. But no matter if you have a platform to speak on, or if you just want to take someone out for the first time, or help someone who's gotten into it but kind of struggling with it, anything like that can help. Like that's just one step in the right direction, and you'll get a level of fulfillment out of it that's you're not able to get from anywhere else. At least that's been my experience.
Absolutely. And one thing I want to make clear is that to mentor someone, it doesn't mean you're taking them to your spot and you're putting them on the animal that you would have shot. Although that is an option for people to do, mentorship is more that you learn this as you become a parent. I want my children to be independent thinkers, and I don't want to give them the answer. I want to teach them how to find the answer themselves. So mentoring new hunters is you teaching them to be able to do it themselves, not spoon feeding them. I was talking with Ryan Lampers, the stealthy hunter, about a week ago, and he said when he took his daughter out hunting for the first time, he provided a scavenger hunt, and one of the things is all of a sudden you start getting your mind off of, I'm only looking for this animal. And all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, look for tracks, look for a rub, look for a game trail. At what time is the wind going to be going west? And you start teaching all these other aspects that are going to lead to the bigger picture for people to start having success.
Yeah, I mean it's the same. That's exactly the same thing. Like you're talking about when you give someone wild game meat, versus teaching them something about how to hunt for themselves. It's not valued the same. So if you took someone, and although every way can help in some sort, but if you just took them to your, say, a box blind and a deer came out and they shot it, they might not get as much satisfaction out of you teaching them the process along the way. And and that's what creates the people that stay with it rather than someone that does it once or twice.
Yeah, because just like a good book or a good movie, there has to be a hook, right? If you don't have the good hook, you're going to lose the reader. You're going to lose the person watching. And when it comes to hunting, if you just killing an animal is not the hook. And that's what I want to get clear and spread the message to everyone. It is not about the killing of the animal that identifies us as hunters. It is all the preparation, all the journey, all the adventure with the killing of an animal, and then everything else that goes back home with us. And that the impact it leaves not only with ourselves, but with our families, with our relatives, with our families and friends, and ultimately the community in which you're a part of. That is what being a hunter is all about. And so if you're only giving somebody the opportunity to squeeze the trigger, well, you're not going to hook them, because that doesn't provide the adventure. It doesn't provide the ultimate rush. Yeah, it gets your heart pounding, but it's not, at least in my experience, and I don't want to put words in people's mouths, but it doesn't get them to want to fully dive into it head over heels and be a hunter.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. And it's, I think for a long time, and even now, I think it's trending the right direction, but it's still not where it needs to be. But like, if you think about, so from my experience, I've seen, generations of hunters in my family and everything. And it always was something that was just kind of, something people did, and everyone was kind of secretive about it. And, I'm not going to go out there and tell everyone where I'm hunting at or anything like that. But, it was just something that you did and just kind of stayed, within your own head and your own family or whatever it is. And so, like, for example, where I think that this mindset comes from, I think it was actually yesterday, I had posted something on Facebook, and it was all about, a certain tactic I was using for hunting deer. And I, explained it in detail and why I do that and this and that. And I had a guy comment on it and say, you need to quit telling people all the tactics to make them successful, or something like along those lines. And, right away, I didn't respond the way that I wanted to, because to me, that's a very selfish comment. But it's, if you can provide resources to people, if someone that's really wants to have the drive to do it and wants to really be successful, if I can give them that information and they want to, say go on their first Western hunt, or if they want to kill their first mountain whitetail or whatever it is, like if they have that drive to do that, I want to help. Like I want to do that. And that doesn't mean me holding their hand doing it, but any little thing that I can do to help that, I think is crucial. And I wish more people would have that mindset, not that I learned this is my way, this is why I'm successful, and that's it,
Absolutely. And dude, this is where I'm getting all fired up right now. We could make this like a multiple hour conversation and podcast episode, but just a few things I want to touch on right there before I lose track of my thoughts is, number one, like, for example, social media, people, they are so quick to react without like truly thinking things through. And so in the state of Washington, there are elk, but on the certain parts of the state, you'll find them versus others. And so I actually posted a picture on a social media account, Washington Backcountry, of a sign of one of our wilderness areas here in the state of Washington. And I had so many comments being like, great, now all the wild places are going to get ruined. Here's social media posting a picture. And I was like, dude, it is a sign of a wilderness area, number one. And number two, it's like, it's our land, use it. And the second part I want to talk about in regards to that is, and this is going to really, I hope what I'm about to say fires people up and kind of pisses them off a little bit. I want you to start thinking. This is where the inward reflection comes to outward correction. People live in scarcity. They live in a mindset of scarcity. Start living in a mindset of abundance. And when you can live in abundance, your entire world changes, and you're not so afraid of losing everything, and not so afraid of allowing other people to find joy and find fulfillment. It's mine. Oh, I got to hold on to this. Oh, give. And you're never going to outgive good. And it's always going to return back to you. And whether or not you are a faith-based person or you believe in karma, ultimately, when you're either allowing the blessings to flow, or you are putting a stop to that flow of energy. And it's better to be a conduit of good and allow it to flow to other people, and stop living in scarcity and stop thinking that this is my spot, when ultimately it is about creating an opportunity for every single person in this world to feel loved, accepted, and be a part of something.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And like you said, I'm not like super open about like certain locations that I hunt or anything, but like I've shared photos where people are commenting on it. Oh, that's this place. Oh man, hopefully no one knows where that's at, because now that spot's the same thing like you said about posting a wilderness sign. I posted a picture and there was a very well-known mountain range in the background, and people were just kind of giving me shit about it. And, oh, that was a good place to hunt and all this stuff. And I'm like, man, like, first of all, it takes some serious effort and commitment to get to some of these places. And if someone really wants to go there just based on a social media post, then, more power to them, because it takes so much more to be successful on a hunt than, just seeing a post of someone else doing something there,
right. Than just being there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, I've, and I can't say I've always been at the mindset I have now. I definitely was not, I was always like one of the secretive, persons. Like, that's what I grew up as far as, you don't tell anybody
that's
this.
old style hunting.
Yeah, it is.
That's old style hunting.
Yes, you're exactly right. And it's taken a while, and it's still something that's developing. And I hope that I continue to go down that path of getting better at it. And it's not, and I think a lot of people have that, internal kind of struggle about it. And the more you reflect on it and think about it, the more positive that can come out of the whole thing.
Absolutely. Hey, we're not perfect. Listen, I don't want to give away my hunting location just as much as the next guy. And it's not, like I said, going back to it, it's not about giving away hunting locations. It's about bringing people into the fold. It's about getting people to, be a part of something bigger than themselves. And that's it.
Yeah, and so I had a conversation with Corey Jacobson, and he was saying people were giving him a bunch of crap for a YouTube video he had about how to apply and hunt Idaho, his home state. Everyone's like, oh, you showed this map of my area, blah, 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 or now, this is going to be overhunted. He made such a good point. He goes, I've been putting out information other people have, on the internet for a good almost 10 years now. And he goes, hunting success rates have not increased at all. Like,
right?
You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't have this huge effect on it or anything else, Okay, say, you're talking about, say, for example, you did something of certain wilderness area. We'll just use that for an example. And you talked about how awesome this wilderness area is, and just from a perspective of being there, not even necessarily the game that are there available. But
right.
It's not going to change anything in the big scheme of things. Okay, maybe a couple guys go there that didn't before. That does not affect anything. And that he made such a good point with it, and it's kind of the mindset that I've had, with this whole thing. And I don't know, that's just something I get kind of fired up over talking about myself.
Hey, first off, you do know, so you don't have to justify yourself by saying you don't know, because it's what you believe in, and that's a good thing. And to actually believe in something is important, because Abraham Lincoln said, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. But the point of what you're sharing is like, dude, humans are inherently lazy. The reason they hold on to things and want to protect them because they are, whether it was passed down to them or they did actually take the effort and the energy to go find that spot and almost more or less claim it. But people are lazy. And part of the adventure of hunting is taking you from ground zero all the way to harvesting the animal and returning home. Well, that adventure is finding a place to hunt and finding whether or not it's a good place to hunt, or, okay, we can cross that off the list and move on to the next spot. And that is a part of the excitement. Over here in the state of Washington, let's use modern firearm, for example. You can deer hunt for modern firearm deer for 2 weeks, and then you got 4 days later in the season. That's it. So you wait an entire year for 2 weeks and then 4 days, and then your season's over. So I understand you don't want to give up your spot, but there's so much, and this is why hunting is so cool, is that there's so much preparation that can lead in to you actually raising your success percentages, harvest percentages, rather than just having Corey Jacobson say, this is how you can hunt Idaho. The percentages don't change. People still got to get up off the couch and put in the work.
Yeah.
And one of the beautiful things about hunting is that you get out of it what you put in. if you're going to just drive around in a car and glass clear cuts, you might see animals, you might not. You might get lucky, you might not. But if you do the work and you put in the effort and you really care about it, you're only going to get it back. And that's the whole point, is that you're not going to outgive good. You're only going to sharpen yourself. You're only going to become a better hunter, a better outdoorsman, a better teacher, and be able to communicate why things didn't work out the way they did, and learn what is the best avenue and how to do things. And this is a part of what I call the adventure, the primal adventure.
Yeah, man, I couldn't have said that any better. I agree, and I'm glad we hit some of those topics. It's something that's doesn't get talked about enough, and hopefully affects some people to be able to reflect on themselves and think about that before they start typing on social media or whatever it is, and the bigger scheme of things in life. But so
right, like, hey, listen to all the listeners out there. You don't have to agree with us, but it doesn't mean you have to hate us either. I am just pursuing my passion, and my passion is hunting, and I want to get other people involved, period. And Bo, you're doing the same thing, and ultimately we're all on the same side. So, if you don't agree with it, okay, cool. You don't have to like my haircut, but it's my haircut. And that's where we need to drop the judgment and start just being accepting of people, of who they are and how they think.
Well, hold on a second. We're not exactly on the same side. I mean, you're in Washington, I'm in Pennsylvania, so we're kind of on opposite sides.
Wait a minute. Are we colliding? Is this the East Meets West Hunt podcast?
I mean, where does East meets West at? I haven't figured that out myself.
I don't know. Is it the Rocky Mountains? Is it the Mississippi? What is it?
I don't know. My literally my 85-year-old grandfather asked me that question. Where's East meets West at? I was like, I don't know. I just started laughing. Oh,
that's man. Awesome.
So one other thing that I really wanted to ask you about is you were successful at killing an awesome bull elk last year, and I kind of want to hear a little bit about that story.
Oh, man. So it's okay. So I'm a believer in life that there's no coincidences. Things happen the way that they're supposed to happen. Just like me randomly going to a BHA pint night and Steven Ranella being there and me getting to meet him was no coincidence. It's a part of this journey that is only helping me get my message out. So being a hunter who at the time has only ever killed a black bear as a big game animal. And I've shot coyotes and I've shot birds, but ultimately I've yet to even shoot a deer. So I go on this journey and I shoot my bear and I start social media and I'm like, all right, dude, I'm going to elk hunt this year with a bow. I watched Born and Raised Outdoors. I'm running on the treadmill. I'm getting jacked. And I am a believer in the power of positive thinking. I'm like, okay, I'm shooting a bull elk this year. I'm shooting a 6x6 and it is going to just be a monster and it's going to happen. And so this is like in December, January of 2018. In February, March, I purchased a bow. I start shooting, and out of the blue, and one of the very opening lines of my book is I've always wanted to be a cowboy, but I've never ridden a horse, is I get a message. I'm selling a gun because I've always been a gun enthusiast. I'm selling a very expensive gun online, and I have a guy reach out to me who said, hey, I would be willing to trade you a guided elk hunt for your gun. And I'm like, are you serious? He's like, yeah, and it's a horse pack-in trip. And first and foremost, I'm like, okay, number one, I have, whether or not I shoot an elk, I'm going to have the opportunity to learn, which is something I've wanted. I get to ride a horse and I get to go on this really sweet adventure. And so this is where it's like everything is not coincidence, like it's meant to happen. So I'm writing my book. I've wanted to be a cowboy, never ridden a horse. All of a sudden, here comes this guy offering me to pack me in on horses into the wilderness to go hunt elk with this bow that I just shot. And I'm thinking to myself, dude, I'm going to shoot a monster bull. This is going to be freaking awesome. Here we go. And so he dropped us off. My buddy from North Dakota flew out and joined me on the hunt. And he dropped us off in the wilderness. And the only elk that we saw out of a 7-day hunt was the bull elk that I shot. And my buddy actually had a shot opportunity on it before I did. My buddy Jeff Winslow out in North Dakota, he's a good dude. He actually had a shot opportunity at it before I did. However, it was day 2 of our hunt, and day 1 we flipped a coin as to who was going to be the first shooter, and he won. And so he chose day 1, and he passed on this bull, and I ended up shooting it. And holy smokes! And then a part of this journey of me talking about hunting and mentorship is, I don't think in the hunting world people will take you serious if you've never actually shot any animals and had some success. So I think there is a little bit of this aspect of, like destiny of me taking that bull as a part of the resume of hunting to give me some credibility about what I'm talking about. So we're hiking this trail. It's right near the Pacific Crest Trail in the state of Washington for all of you Washington people. And last year, there's a ton of horrible fires that hikers were getting diverted off the trail, which, some people refer to them as Cresties because Pacific Crest Trail. So the Cresties were being diverted down our trail. And so that morning, we actually passed like 30 backpackers that camped at the site where there was elk sign all over. And we specifically didn't camp there with the intention of hunting it.
Yeah.
And so the day 1 where my buddy, he won and he was the first shooter, we actually asked these people, will you please not camp here? There's plenty of sites down the way because we are here to hunt and they're in here. Please don't scare them off type thing. We'll pay you money, whatever. And these people just looked at us like, oh, you're hunters. If we see any animals, we're going to scare them off. And I was like, man, what a horrible view that people are so quick to judge and put up walls and segregate people and put them in boxes of like, oh, I'm a backpacker, I am a hunter, and it's like, well, we're all public land users. And this is where it comes from my days of working at REI. It's like, dude, I probably sold you that backpack that you're carrying all that gear in. Yeah, I'm carrying a bow and I'm trying to take my own meat. There's no difference between you purchasing your organic grass-fed beef and me just taking an elk. So we walked by, they ended up camping there, and it was sad for us that day. My buddy, we never saw any elk, but the next morning we had plans of going past them and going deeper. And this was about 7:00 in the morning, and my buddy was ahead of me in the trail. And I was actually, hey, you never want to be caught with your pants down, right? I was actually going to the bathroom, taking a number 1, not a number 2, about 30 seconds before my buddy spotted the elk. And so I zip up my pants and I run down, run quickly and quietly, make my way down the trail. And we look uphill and there's a line of cows working their way uphill. And it was morning time. And so, it's September. I think maybe September 15th is when I shot my bull. But so it's September. There's got to be a bull with these cows. In the state of Washington, where I was hunting, is 3-point minimum or better. And so it's like, well, if it's legal, I'm going to shoot it, or at least attempt to, knowing that this was the first time I've ever even gone bow hunting. And so all of a sudden, we let out a cow call, and this bull just fires off. And all of a sudden, this is the first time I ever truly experienced a bull elk bugling in the woods. And it shook me to my core. And oh my gosh, everybody's got to experience this because it is absolutely life-changing. So not to make the story super long, I'm going to cut it down short. The bull fires off. We fire off a bugle right back and cut it off. And then we go back and forth between two different cow calls. We're using Phelps gray amp and the white amp, mouth diaphragms, to simulate two different cow elk that were down the hill that he left behind. And so all of a sudden he just starts ripping bugles and raking trees, and you could just hear him getting absolutely pissed. He works his way down and he's just destroying this vine maple. I can't see the antlers at all. It's kind of like in Jurassic Park where you can't see the raptors when they're feeding. They're just shaking the trees around.
Yep.
And so I'm down on the trail looking uphill, and my heart is just like boom, 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 boom. And I'm like, oh, okay, calm down. And all of a sudden it comes out of the vine maples, and I see the tips, and I never counted anything. I just recognized in my mind, like, oh, this is a shooter. And at this point, my buddy is about 40 yards up the trail from me, and we're kind of like in a triangle with the elk. And it comes out and it sticks its head. And as it's moving at me, I draw. And it sticks its head up and over this knoll, and I get just a view of its head and its antlers. And my buddy had a broadside shot at 30 yards on it, and it stayed there for a long time. And I just had my pins on its face, and I was like, oh man. It crests over the hill. My buddy didn't shoot. Bless his absolute heart, because to this day he is yet to take an elk himself. And it crests over the hill, comes down in front of me, and I have the absolute shakes, and I'm trying to do my best to take the circles and make them small just to get them on the vitals. And I think my first shot was about at 25 yards, and I front shouldered him. Absolutely just walloped him. But being a new hunter, and I was talking to my buddy the day before, he was like, if the elk goes uphill, you really screwed up. If he goes downhill, we're going to be okay. And I shoot a 70-pound bow with a 30.5-inch draw length. And so I have a pretty good kinetic energy force in my arrows. And so I shoot him, and it just smacks him. He buckles, and I see the arrow stuck in his shoulder. And I'm like, dude, that's no good. It runs downhill past me. Cuts across the trail, goes down into this marsh, and we get the bull to stop. And I quickly knocked another arrow, and I chase it. I pull back. I never ranged it a second time, but I'm thinking it's right around 30, 35 yards.
Oh, so he's still pretty close at that point. Yeah.
Yeah. So he ran probably in that moment, probably around like 75 yards in like uphill, downhill, and then he was running the swamp a little bit. And I sent this arrow, and all I heard was a whap. And I'm like, no way. What the heck just happened? Because I knew I had a clear shot. My second shot, I was steady. And my buddy comes running down the trail, pissed, just absolutely pissed at me. He's like, where did you put that second arrow? Because he passed up on a broadside shot that would have been just absolutely easy money. And I swear I was dead on him, but all I heard was a tree. And after I shot, I saw the elk start to drop its head and make its way off into the woods. So we pull out for a little bit, and you can actually see this video on my YouTube channel. It's only like a minute long, where I come down the trail, and I have my bow up in my hands because I just went and saw and located the elk. Turns out I had a clean pass through, double lunged them, and the arrow, which I heard, stuck in a tree. So that's what I heard. And I recovered a beautiful symmetrical 6x6 bull elk, and it's the first antlered animal I've ever shot. And it has absolutely changed my life.
Man, that is That's an awesome story, and I definitely give your buddy credit for that, and like whenever I'm hunting with people, I tell them, say it's my turn to shoot. I'm like, listen, if it comes by you and you have a good shot, I tell them to shoot. Like I don't want them to do that, and like that's really respect. I respect the the hell out of him for doing that.
He's a great man. The one thing he did say is that he goes, I was going to shoot, but I saw you were at full draw already.
Okay. Yeah.
I was like, okay, well, that's good. Like I was ready to rock and roll with it. But, the emotions, I did not realize I started bawling my eyes out and just crying because of the emotions that were in me. Not because I was sad, not because I was overcome with joy. And I don't even know where these emotions came from, but that's the raw emotion of what hunting can do for you.
Yeah.
It really connects you with yourself and with nature.
Man, that's an awesome story. And I remember when you posted that picture, and you might even have sent it to me too. I don't remember, but I was like so pumped. I was like, that's awesome. Cause you and I had just kind of started talking, I think a little bit on Instagram at that point. And I was like, that is freaking awesome. Like I was pumped.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate it. I hope everyone has the opportunity to take an animal that every animal they're proud of, but is, for me, to be so new at hunting and have that be my first antlered animal. People are like, well, it's all downhill from there. You might as well quit hunting. And I'm like, whoa, I'm just getting started.
Yeah.
Come on now.
Try me.
But right. So like this last week at school, I had an opportunity to provide tacos for my entire staff, and I made the taco meat was elk, and the staff members, they didn't know it, and they were eating it. And these are people that when they did find out it was elk, they're like, man, I wouldn't have eaten that if I would have known, but yet I couldn't tell a difference. And thank you for allowing me to share in that. And that's one of the things about the community aspect, is that people who, whether they're hunters or not, they're getting the rewards and the benefits of people who do hunt.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. That's a risky move there, not telling them ahead of time. Some people could probably get mad, but that's something I would do too.
Well, let's just say this: it was free lunch, and they had their choice of whether or not they wanted to participate in it.
Yep. Hey, Yep. I gotcha.
Yeah, it wasn't like they were forced to eat it.
Yeah.
So
no, that's awesome, man. I'm glad that I got to hear that story from you, and be able to, the listeners to be able to hear that too. And like you said, everything happens, for a reason. It wasn't by, just happenstance that happened. That all happened, you worked for it. So.
Absolutely. So just a couple last thoughts that I want to leave with you and your listeners is, if you're listening to this podcast and you are new to hunting, or you are thinking about getting into it, the reward is great. You got to stick with it. Don't give up because of frustration, because when you give up early and you give up quick, you're not going to be fulfilled, and you're going to be filled with regret. And those of you who listen to this podcast and are hunters, I'm going to challenge you to think about, how did you get to the point where you are? Who taught you how to hunt? And if they didn't teach you how to hunt, how would you have been a hunter? Or would you be where you are at today? And so to now give back to the community by mentoring other people and allowing them to have the same opportunity and the same chance to change their lives and to be transformed through primal adventure.
That's awesome, man. I appreciate you, sharing that message and everything else today, with the listeners. I think it's a breath of fresh air that's, needed sometimes. And I get the same way with, I get so into hunting and so into the pursuit of the animal. Sometimes it's good to reflect and think about how you can, give back even more. So I appreciate that.
Man, absolutely. Hey, listen, it's just our life. We only get one of them. You gotta make the most of it.
Yep. No, I couldn't agree anymore, man. So where can people find some more information on you and Washington Backcountry, everything that we've been talking about here today?
Yeah, so you can go to our website, which is wabackcountry.com, and that takes you to the homepage. And from there, you can see we started a Hunting 101 series on there that is both video based on YouTube and also written word. We have a blog in which a lot of different articles go up on there, and as well as, and I'm really glad that you asked this, we just recently added a forum to our website, not only for the ability to ask questions about specific animals and stuff like that, but if you want to be a mentor, and this is crossing state boundaries, this is not just for the state of Washington, because you can also get to our website by going to soulfulhunter.com. And that's SOULFUL hunter.com. And on that forum, you can find parts to, if you're looking for a mentor, if you want a mentor, or if you're looking for a hunting partner. And we want to be a resource to bridge the gap and provide opportunities for people to connect and a conduit for people to have success. So you can go to our website at soulfulhunter.com or wabackcountry.com. The podcast, which is brand new, only has 2 episodes up, is the Soulful Hunter podcast. We're on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, Podbean, and Stitcher. And then I run 2 Instagram accounts, Washington_Backcountry and the Soulful Hunter podcast. And then you can find Washington Backcountry on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube.
Awesome, man. That's a lot of places that you're putting out content. And again, it goes back to the amount of work that you're putting into this and helping to change people's lives. So I definitely encourage everybody to check that out and reach out to you if you have any questions.
Oh, absolutely. I will get back to every direct message or every email that is sent, because I'm in it for all of you. I don't get paid. I do not make any money off of this. And I want to see hunting be around for generations to come. But more importantly, I want to see lives be transformed. And it's about growing as an individual and giving back and finding purpose and passion in life and having hope and being inspired. So yeah, Bo, thank you so much for the opportunity to come on and talk with you and be a part of this podcast.
Yeah, man. No, thank you for coming on. And I'm looking forward to chatting some more and talking more, after this hunting season goes too, and getting to swap more stories.
Absolutely. And we're going to have you on the Soulful Hunter podcast here coming up as well. So, at the end of the day, people, it's not just about the state in which you hunt in, it's about everywhere. So, the reason why I started the Soulful Hunter podcast was to be able to cross state lines and go nationwide. But people need to understand about what it's like to hunt in different regions and how you can find fulfillment through that. So that's one of the reasons why I want to have you on as a guest, is to bring a completely different and fresh perspective to a lot of the listeners I would have out here who are more used to that Western style of hunting.
Awesome, man. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. Thank you, man. And looking forward to talking with you again.
All right, Johnny. Hey, we'll talk to you soon.
Yep. Take care.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of East Meets West Hunt with your host, Bo Martonic. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit eastmeetswesthunt.com, Facebook at East Meets West Outdoors, and Instagram at East Meets West Hunt. If you enjoyed today's episode, please review and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time.